Hey my friends, this is Sylvie Curry, Lady of Q, and once again I'm in my kitchen. Today is March 28th, 2020, and as you all know, on that date we were still locked in, or locked down, or stay at home. Today is a special internet day for a lot of my barbecue friends. We're calling it hashtag Stay In Cookout, meaning cook out on your deck, cook out on your patio, or wherever. So I'm doing my thing here, and I'm going to be cooking out. Later on I'm going to do some hamburgers. But anyway, to start out, I'm going to be making some brioche buns, some brioche rolls for these hamburgers. I got this recipe from NoelleCarterFoods.com, and I trust her recipes. I've been following her for a long time, and I suggest you head on over to her website and see what she's got. Let's go do this. We're making brioche rolls for hamburgers. For this recipe, I have 3/4 cup of milk, and actually that's going to be divided because I took 2 tablespoons out of it to make the egg wash that I'm going to be using on the buns after I finish forming them. I've got a package of dry yeast, and that's active dry yeast, approximately 2½ teaspoons. I've got a 1/4 cup of sugar, in addition to 1 teaspoonful that's going to be going in my milk when I go to bloom my yeast. I've got 3 eggs. One of the eggs will go in the egg wash with the milk, and the other 2 eggs I'm going to be using in the dough mixture, and these are at room temperature. I've got 10 tablespoons of butter, and my butter has been at room temperature also. 10 tablespoons is like a whole stick plus 2 tablespoons. Flour, I've got 3½ cups of flour. Recipe did call for bread flour, but I didn't have any. All I have is all-purpose. In addition, I have a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I've got 1/2 cup of milk plus 2 tablespoons, so it's a little less than 3/4 cup of milk. And I warmed it, and it's not hot, but it's less than 105 degrees. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my 1 teaspoon of sugar, in addition to my packet of active dry yeast. And we're going to stir that together, and I'm going to let it sit on the side till it blooms. And that way we'll know that it's good yeast. I've got my mixer set up, and I've got a whisk attachment in there so that I can whisk 2 eggs, which I've already put in the bowl, and we'll get that going. The directions were to whisk it until the eggs are light and fluffy, and that's going to take, about a minute. So I've got my egg mixture light and fluffy, and now it's time to add my yeast mixture. And I want to show you something. There's my yeast mixture, a little bit of yeast, the sugar, and the warm milk. And it's bloomed, so I know it's good yeast. And I'm going to add that to the bowl. I've got my milk, yeast, and sugar mixture added to the bowl. And I've changed the attachment to a dough hook. And we're going to mix that. I'm now also going to add the remaining sugar. So now I have my egg mixture incorporated with my yeast mixture. My next step is I'm going to take my flour, and I'm going to add the salt to the flour, and we'll give that a little bit of a stir just to get it blended somewhat. Then my next step is to start adding the flour to this mixture. Now I'm deviating a little bit from Noelle's recipe, or suggested recipe. And at this stage, she would have added the butter with a paddle attachment on. But I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to add the flour first, and then after I've added the flour and got it incorporated, then I'm going to start adding the butter. I'm going to add about half of this flour to start, and then let it start to blending in there, or combining. I'm now going to add the balance of the flour. And we'll combine this. Now that I've got my flour incorporated or combined with my yeast and milk mixture, I'm now going to start adding the butter. And I'm going to do that 1 tablespoon at a time. Got my butter. Got my butter. I'll start adding that. The other thing you'll notice, I forgot to bring this up, was that I took the dough hook off and put on the another attachment, the paddle attachment. My dough is ready to come off. And I'm going to take it over to the counter. We're going to knead the dough until it becomes somewhat silky, however smooth. And let's go over and do that now. Here's my dough. I'm going to take some flour, lay it out here on the counter. Take my dough out of the bowl of my mixer. Then we're going to take that and we're going to knead it just a little bit. I've done a lot of the kneading already in the KitchenAid. You can see it's a very elastic dough. Then I'm going to take my dough and form it into a ball. At the same time I'm doing that, I'm actually stretching the top of the ball. I have my same mixing bowl. I've added a little bit of oil in there. I'm going to take this ball, put it in my mixing bowl. Then we're going to cover it, the bowl, with some plastic wrap. And we're going to put this in a corner over there on the counter and let it rise for about 1 to 1.5 hours. As they say, it's going to double in size. The recipe states that this dough can also be refrigerated overnight at this stage, and then the next day you'll take it out, let it come to room temperature, and just continue on with the recipe. We'll come back after this has had a chance to rise, and we'll go on to the next step in making our brioche hamburger buns. I'm now going to make the egg wash that is going to go on top of my buns once I prepare them. I've got the remaining 2 tablespoons of milk, and I've got 1 egg. So I'm mixing the egg and the milk to combine them evenly. This is going to go on my buns to help assure that they have a nice, pretty brown color. My dough was rising for about 1.5 hours, and it's more than doubled in size. It's looking really good. Let me poke it a little bit. Very, very soft and tender. What I'm going to do now is to roll it out on the counter and divide it into the individual buns. We'll roll it here on the counter. We'll deflate it. I'm going to divide it, I think, into 8 individual pieces, because I want them to be hamburger buns, so I do want it to be a little bit big. And we've got it into 8s. And I've got a scale here so I can make sure that they're all uniform, so I'm going to weigh them out. That's about 131 grams. That was a little larger, so I'm going to pull some off of that one. I'm going to take each section and roll it into a ball and make sure that on the back I crimp it so that it stays intact. And I have a tray here that's lined with parchment that I'm going to line them up on. After weighing each of them, they came in at about 140 grams each. And I think that's a good number. And we'll go through and we'll form all of these into a ball. Crimp the back to make sure that it's intact. And put it on my tray. I'll go through and do all of these. When I come back, we'll move on to putting the egg wash on them. I've got all my buns rolled out. I've got 8 of them. They come in at about 140 grams each. And I'm going to take my egg wash and just brush over each one of them. It's just a matter of taking my little sauce brush here. It's a silicone sauce brush, and go over each one of them. In addition to the egg wash, I've also got some sesame seeds here. So I'm going to coat, I think about half of them with some sesame seeds and half without. And so it'll be like a sesame seed bun. There we go. These are now going to set aside for about 15 minutes. And in a 15-minute time period, they are going to rise again and get much larger. Then I'll put it in a 375-degree oven, and we see what we get. My buns were setting out for about 15 minutes, and now I'm getting ready to put them in the oven to cook. They're going to go in there for 15 to 20 minutes, depending upon how they look and the doneness. And we'll pull them out, and we'll see how our brioche hamburger buns come out. Well, they're done. I think they came out fairly good. I don't know what the inside looks like yet. I just pulled them out of the oven, so I haven't cut them yet. I'll let them cool off a bit. They smell wonderful. Just the smell of fresh made bread is just, woo, exhilarating. Anyway, here we have it, homemade brioche buns, which I'm going to use as hamburger buns, which is why I made them large. And they're going to go in my tummy. Yummy, yummy. I cut open one of the buns just to see what the texture would be. And the texture is very fluffy looking. It looks like for sure the hamburgers will hold up in here. So it's going to make a very good, tasty hamburger bun. Stay tuned.